Hello, I'm Jim Miller. I'm here with Terrence Moore. The FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. We're pleased tonight to have with us the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Hagerstown, Washington County Chamber of Commerce, Paul Frey. Paul, welcome.
Hey, good to see you. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you for joining us. I think your visit is timely. There is a lot going on in Hagerstown. There's a lot going in Washington County, and there's always a lot going on at the Chamber.
Always something to talk about, yes.
As we get started, we have to assume there may be some of our viewership that don't know about the Chamber, don't know what it is, don't know its mission. Can you talk to us about what is the Hagerstown, Washington County Chamber of Commerce?
So our Chamber of Commerce, like many chambers, our role is to help promote the economic health of a community. And so we believe in a free market economy, and our main role is to protect the investment that businesses have made in their organization. So we're about private sector, and I always say at ribbon cuttings and other events, the private sector drives the success of any community. If you don't have a healthy private sector, nothing else matters. And if you don't have good quality of life, you have to have that as well. So we work on both ends. We focus on private sector, a healthy work area, but also do you have quality of life, good schools, good public safety, arts and entertainment, things to do other than work. So we do both of those things.
So how does that mission manifest in terms of what you do specifically for the community?
We are really engaged in the community. First of all, we're strong advocates for the business community. We work hard with our local, city and county officials. Also, it's in Annapolis. We work closely with our elected officials there, our delegation, and our General Assembly members. So we support good legislation for business, and then we help tamp down the legislation we think is harmful to business. That's the first thing we do. And then we're really engaged with all of our players here in the community, whether it be the school system, Washington County Public Schools. We have activities with them. We're involved with the city of Hagerstown. We're involved with the county. We're involved with the library. So everything we can do to be at the table to make the community a really good place to be for everybody.
The Chamber is also about education, though. I know that as a Chamber member, and I've been a Chamber member in one form or another with the different businesses that I've either owned or worked with for probably, well, I'm going to age myself here. Let's just say more than a couple decades.
But you've also been a board chair, right?
That's true.
Yeah.
I was,
Yeah.
yes, several years ago. But the education part of it, you host educational conferences
We do.
or elements as well?
It could be on running a business, it could be on leadership, it could be on apprenticeship. And so if there's an area of interest, a subject matter, we bring people together from the community to help educate, especially smaller businesses that may not have the resources.
All right, Terrence?
And I know you're speaking a lot of the formalities of a chamber, but there's also a community that gathers within the chamber walls and outside in the community as well. Talk to us a little bit about that.
And so you're maybe talking about the networking or the connections we make with our members.
Absolutely.
And so, for instance, this morning we have an Eggs and Issues. Jonathan Horowitz, the Director of the Community and Business Development for the county, presented what was happening in the county for economic development. We had 70 people there. We have our monthly business and social hour, our BASH, we like to call it. Tomorrow night it's going to be, or on Thursday, the third Thursday of the month, we have a different business. We have 100 people there that can connect up. Next week, we have a webinar on cannabis in the workplace, because that's going to be adult use cannabis as of July 1st. And we have a number of events once a week or so at the Chamber that help people connect up. And I tell someone, if you want to find someone in the community, call us and we can connect you and make an introduction.
Something else I love about the Chamber as well is business to business. So a lot of those who are providing the resources and information are Chamber members speaking to Chamber members. So that builds on that as well. So talk to about some of those programs that you have as well.
We have our annual business seminar at HCC in the fall, and I know you've presented over the years, Terrence. And so to your point, we bring people together, subject matter experts on human resources, on leadership, on marketing, so that people can come for sometimes the cost of a breakfast and learn a lot about a certain subject. And so we bring together the experts. 99% of the time they're from Washington County. Very few times can't we find someone that can talk about something that's not here, whether it be marketing, leadership, human resources, entrepreneurship. We work closely with the Entrepreneur Incubator at HCC. So again, we had Startup Week in Hagerstown that was very well attended, and so we worked together with Justine in this case and other members.
You know, but I'm also amazed. I know you host an economic forum every year, and Anibal Basu has presented that for how many years?
18 years now.
Yeah, I mean, he is a very sought-after resource, and the fact that he takes one night a year and comes to Hagerstown, and number one, he's hilarious, right? But number two, to listen to that guy, I mean, it's riveting.
When we reserve him that night for the next year. We get on his calendar because we get 250 people there, and as you said, and we say there every year, he makes economics fun, if you can believe it.
Yeah.
He's got a great memory, and he goes from the international level all the way down to the city of Hagerstown.
Well, that's what I was going to say. He you know, you would expect somebody at that level to just present some generic thing that he presented to 20 other organizations. That is not what that night's about. He is absolutely focused in on Hagerstown, Washington County, you know, what the population suggests in our community. It's an amazing event. If any of our viewers have not seen that, it's well worth attending.
It's in November every year.
And if you're a chamber member, you get in less expensively.
That's
right?
exactly right.
Yep.
And that goes kind of back to, you know, building on that about being generic. You know, right now, a lot of business support comes from online learning, and people don't really know your market, the community that you're actually in. So the chamber actually combats a lot of that. So, but there has been some balance, because you know, post-pandemic, during the pandemic, there was a lot of courses and opportunities that were presented online. How's that faring now?
We still do a little bit. There's some convenience. For instance, this webinar next week on cannabis, the gentleman's in Baltimore. And so we're going to get several hundred people on the call that he can talk to about this subject. And as I think both of you would attest to, being in person is nothing better than that for that relationship. It's about relationships, it's about shaking hands, it's about seeing someone eye to eye. And so while it's convenient to have a Zoom meeting for a 15-minute meeting you have to drive to make the connections, to build those warm relationships, you really need to be face-to-face, eye to eye, and be able to talk with folks.
Great.
All right, well, we want to save the majority of our time for the important issues, because as we said coming into this segment, there's a lot going on, and I know you have a lot to talk to us about. So let's take a break here. When we come back, more with Chamber President and CEO Paul Frey. Stay with us. Welcome back. Again, we're here with Paul Frey, President and CEO of the Washington County Chamber of Commerce. Paul, you, by way of the fact that you talk to all of these different people, have certainly a unique perspective on business in Washington County, and that's what I'd like to focus on for this segment. Terrence, let's start with your questions.
I think it's always great to have your ear to the ground. I think that if anybody in the community has their ear to the ground about what's happening in the business community, what's happening statewide, even nationally, how we're going to be impacting our local community. Talk to me a little bit about how you build that rapport and you build out on that information and what you're hearing about the economy right now.
So we talked about relationships. It's not Paul Frey, it's the chamber president. So when the chamber president calls, say, hey, can I visit your business, or can we visit? It's almost always a yes. And I love that part of my job. I get to go see different businesses, whether there be a one-person shop or Volvo with 1,500 people, or visiting our Washington County Public Schools. So it's about relationships, and we want folks to be successful, and that's the approach we take. If someone calls us and they have a question, we have people calling from all over the country about something. My favorite is an elderly gentleman a couple years ago did not have internet. He was trying to find brown suspenders. So we referred him, I think, to Walmart, said, you know, here's where you go. But people call us and we want to connect them. So it's about relationships. And what we find out is almost anything you need is here in Washington County. So if someone's looking for a service, if they're looking for a product, we can hook them up. We can find them somebody to talk to and make the introduction. And I say a lot, let me introduce you, then I'll exit the middle, and you all do your work together. And so what I'm hearing mainly, and this is not anything that we own here in Washington County or in Hagerstown, 3 words: labor, labor, labor.
Right.
We have a lot of opportunity. We have the warehouse, distribution centers. We have the hospital. They're going to add a medical school. We have health care. and everyone is looking for help. And so one of the initiatives we've taken on as a stakeholder in the community with lots of partners is how do we attract and retain labor and workers here in Washington County across all the industries. And because it's so competitive, if we don't do that, our friends to the north, our friends to the south in West Virginia are going to beat us to it. And we're competing for the same, generally the same labor. And so we're working really hard on that with a lot of our partners. Then we quickly turned, well, where are they going to live? Mm-hmm. And then we can talk a little bit either now or later about affordable housing, define that, median income housing. And so that's what we're hearing. We need help. The successful businesses are the ones that can solve the problem. And I tell people, if you can just honor your commitment to your customers and just be a little bit nice, you're gonna be way ahead of everybody else. The bar is so low, around the country that if you can take care of your customers, your clients, if you can be friendly, be urgent, you're gonna be way ahead. And that's what I like about Washington County. It's a very friendly place. As you know, I grew up in Frederick. I came here 9 years ago. Very welcoming community. If you are honest and you honor your commitments, you can go a long way.
I'm a transplant myself from New York, and I agree wholeheartedly as well. But putting yourself in a position to help also puts you in a position of conflict. So how do you balance the large businesses and the small businesses and the medium-sized businesses that may have conflict within themselves, with government, with laws, legislation? How do you balance that and maintain your neutrality throughout, which you do so well?
Thank you. Neutrality is a good word. We call ourselves Switzerland. Whether it be, we fight really hard on behalf of business, so we don't shy away from what's good for business in the private sector. So when we're down in Annapolis and we're fighting some of this legislation we think is unfriendly, we're not ashamed of that. And we know we have members that might see some of this legislation good that maybe we don't agree with. And so we get all perspectives and we talk about what's best for the community. And then we try not to take sides. I mean, I think we're pretty good about that. We say we're for the private sector, we're for growing business and our nonprofits. And so I think what we do is we try to understand the problem and then we connect them up with someone that can help them. And I'm very honest with people. I tell them straightforward, here's my perspective, but tell me your perspective. I want to tell you my biases up front, but let me hear from you. And I think people appreciate that. And I love about my job getting to know other people, getting to learn what their needs are and what their concerns are. And it's not easy, as you know, whether you're an entrepreneur or a larger business. And so we try to help solve the problem. We try to be solution focused. I know Malik Joshi, when I first met him almost 4 years ago, he said, look, anyone can tell me the problem. Help me with the solutions. Right. So we try to stay solution focused and not make things personal.
But, and the reality is two things here. Number one, you've got to, at the end of the day, I know you don't try to take a side, but at some point you have to say we're for it or against it, and that's based on, I assume, the greater good.
It is, and we have a government affairs committee, and we lay out our business agenda and what we are going to support as an organization, business-friendly things, and we also understand we have to work with all the partners in the community so that, I have a saying that everyone can win. We may not always agree with each other, but I think we can find solutions that maybe can help everybody. And sometimes we agree to disagree, and we shake hands.
And that's okay too.
You have to be that way.
Well, and I don't know how the Government Affairs Committee works today, but when I was on that committee years ago, I mean, you had both sides represented there. It's not stacking the deck that we're going to all be for this or you can't serve. No, if you're a chamber member, come on in, give us your opinion, tell us why, and let us come to consensus. And by the way, there may be a larger effort where somebody has a legitimate issue with just one little piece of it. So then we support the larger effort, we just go after this one little piece.
We have very robust discussions in some of our meetings because we do have diverse perspectives. Ultimately, I think we all have the same goals. We want a healthy, vibrant community for business and also for the people who live here.
Well, if we have a healthy business community, arguably we have a healthy constituency for our elected officials and a healthy community at large.
And we like to work. I know there's folks that that maybe are left behind. It could be the homeless. It could be folks who have mental health issues. It could be formerly incarcerated people. So they're members of our community too. So how can we work within our realm with our other partners we have in the community?
You had mentioned earlier about some efforts relative, or some thought process about the larger, with the internet generation and COVID and all of that. How do you see the businesses in Washington County adapting to the concept of remote work? Because remote work is not going away. And in my experience, and I hire a lot of people every year, I hired 54 last year. In my experience, what it does for people in Clear Spring that may be an expert in my case, Microsoft technologies, they can get a salary far higher than they could get usually living in Clear Spring. How do you see businesses adapting to that?
A couple ways. Number one, this whole remote work, and when we were shut down for a bit, some of our service industries have blossomed because they've learned to have curbside service. You can see some of our larger businesses like a Home Depot or Lowe's, Walmart, they have curbside services, so they made it more convenient. It's also, you're able, if you can, get some experts from outside the area, and so that you can do some remote work. So I think it's a mix. We talked a little bit about City. All of their people work remotely now. So they had over 1,000 people at their campus, and now they're all working from their home. So that's how they've adapted. Right now, I think it's an employee-led economy. People want to have some flexibility. So what successful businesses are doing is they're being flexible. They are, if you have kids at home that you need to take care of, if you have family members you need to take care of, if you have a doctor's appointment you need to go to, I think the successful companies where they can, now if you have hands-on manufacturing, you can't do that remotely, but where you can, if you're flexible, I think you have happier employees and more productive employees.
And that's being challenged right now. Some of the largest tech companies right now who started remote work, was innovated, now they're drawing back and forcing their employees to come back to work 3 days at a time. And there's trends that kind of go, and that follow a lot of layoffs as well, which is also a large concern.
Well, and that's a good point too, because the labor market is changing. I see in my business, whereas before we would have to pay beyond top dollar to get the talent we needed, now all of a sudden salary requirements are coming down because the jobs just aren't out there right now, especially in the tech sector.
And we just heard last year 400,000 jobs estimated from entrepreneurship shut down, left the entrepreneurship market. Are you seeing some of that here locally where, I know there was a big boom of everyone, with the Great Resignation and everyone kind of starting their own businesses. Are you seeing some of that? Because I'm sure a lot of them, the first step will become the chamber.
We are, and as we've talked about at HCC, our business incubator is full. We have lots of tenants there. We just talked this morning with someone else that working for yourself gives you some flexibility. I think people rethought their lives during COVID. I know I did. I know we've had conversations about that, what's important. And they said, you know what, I need to reset here. Maybe going to work 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week for someone else is not what I want to do. Maybe I can make a little bit less, but I have quality of life. I can be with my family. I can be with my kids. I can be less stressed. Now, owning your own business has its own set of stresses, but you're more in control. So we have seen that, and we continue to see that across the area. I've met with some of my colleagues last week at other chambers, and they're seeing some of the same things where people are working for themselves. Their quality of life is different. They maybe make a little bit less money. Maybe they're not getting a brand new car every 3 years, but they're making those choices, and that again is impacting our labor force.
Yep, absolutely. And I know there's tons of new projects on the horizon as well. You care to share some of that information with us, Jim? We have time this segment for that?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right.
And so we've talked a little bit about the hospital, the medical school that they're opening, and they're going to start in 2025 with a first class of 180 students, and after 4 years, they're going to have 720 students registering every year. And so that's going to have a big economic impact on our community. It's going to impact our housing. It's going to impact the types of folks we have working here. They're going to need about 80 professors. They're going to be living here and working here. So that's really big. Fort Ritchie, the formerly closed Army base, John Krupetich and his wife and family are really developing that. They have new housing. They have some manufacturing going on. Really exciting things happening there. Of course, the baseball stadium we've talked about for 20 years is coming to fruition.
So it's been longer than 20 years.
In May, hopefully, of 2024, we'll have our first ball game there, which is exciting. On the other end of town, where the stadium was, the old stadium, the city is opening up their field house with 2 indoor turf facilities. They're going to have hard court for basketball, pickleball, so that's exciting. We have a brewery moving in downtown. We have a number of residential areas being developed downtown, which, good news, bad news. It's not necessarily market rate. They're $2,000 to $2,500 a month rent, which if you had said this 5 years ago in Hagerstown, no way.
You'd have been laughed at.
So the good news is we have those folks coming in. The bad news is that really impacts some of this housing that we need for the folks who are not at that level of income.
When I was in New York, I was paying almost $700 for a studio apartment I was renting from my mother, right? And I came here to Hagerstown, this is 2004, and I was able to get a 3-bedroom apartment for the same exact price.
Yeah.
So to see that happening, and we know it's happening across the country,
Yes.
It's not just happening here, and there's not going to be a return to what some of those pre-pandemic housing costs are as well. So, but all these major projects, and many of that you mentioned, is going to also increase the mean salaries and education level
Yes.
as well, and recruit more people into the community.
Yes.
So what's that impact going to be for the chamber?
A couple of things. Number one, as you said, it's going to increase our median income. Right now, it's about $68,000, our median income here. That'll certainly go up as we get doctors coming here, as we get higher level professionals coming here. It also, though, allows for service industries, more restaurants, more dry cleaners, more folks that do your personal work for you, that might run errands. So that's the good news. We think the stadium downtown will help have work for folks who live downtown. We also think for labor, we need to look at some of these other populations that maybe we haven't considered. I know we've talked over the years about formerly incarcerated folks who are able to work and get them into the community, into work here. We've talked about folks who maybe have been dealing with addiction that are recovering and they need to work. So it opens up other possibilities for folks who maybe have not had the opportunity to work. And I tell high school students right now, this is the best time in my lifetime, and I'm 62 years old, to be working as a young person. If you just show up on time, if you're friendly, if you smile, if you do what you're told, it's unlimited what you can accomplish because there's so many opportunities.
What are businesses in our area expressing to you about their concerns? What are the things that worry them at this point?
There's a lot of legislation over the years that have been impacting businesses, in particular smaller businesses, the sick and safe leave that have guaranteed 5 days of PTO for all businesses.
Is that the family, what they call FAMLI?
No, that's different. That's
that's
coming.
different. Okay.
That just got passed.
Right.
So the family medical leave insurance, the way it's written now, you can have up to 24 weeks of paid leave as an employee, depending on the circumstances. And the employees and employers need to pay into this insurance fund.
Well, that's the key, because I don't think the employees understood that this is going to be another Social Security tax where they're going to pay a part of it. And I know it's only, what, 1.2 or something
Well,
like
it's
that?
half of whatever it is. So 1.2, so employees would pay 0.6, the employer 0.6. And over the employees are making 15, 18 bucks an hour, 20 bucks an hour. It might be a $400 a year impact. But if someone is taking money on my paycheck, I want to take advantage of that. And
Right.
so our concern is, will there be abuse? Right now, the way it's set up, employers have very little recourse for employees asking off, and so we're concerned about that. And then the accelerated minimum wage. There's not a lot of places in Washington County that if you want to work, you can't probably make 15. But what it's done is for the teenagers, the first jobs, now we're having to pay those folks that amount. And then our, especially service industries, restaurants have to raise their prices. And so now it costs more to eat out. And so the discretionary income is about the same because
Isn't that amazing?
employers have to charge more because they have to pay their bills. The increased gas tax in Maryland is going up 5 cents more July 1st. And so all these things are really, it's not one or two, it's all of them at once that are impacting businesses.
Yeah, and I thought I read an article where Maryland is now the 3rd or the 4th highest gas tax in the nation.
Just moved up to 10th.
10th.
Just
Was
moved
that
up to
what it
10th,
was?
I
10th,
saw.
okay.
But it's that issue. It's the other taxes that we have. The thing on the agenda next session in 2024, combined reporting, where if you have businesses in multiple states, Maryland wants you to combine all those revenues and pay taxes on all those revenues, even though you're in another state.
But you still have to pay the taxes in those states as well.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Well, and we see a lot of, there are a lot of states that my company does business in where previously we weren't at a level where we needed to collect state sales tax
Right.
and all of that. Now we're getting hit.
Right.
We need to collect everywhere. And I think that, and of course sales tax is just the craziest thing in the world. There is no rhyme nor reason to why we charge or don't charge sales tax in a particular state. So what do you, from your perspective, from an advantage standpoint, if someone were to come to you and say, I'm looking at opening a business in Washington County or the city of Hagerstown, what do you see as our advantages?
We have teams that work really well together. Our departments of economic development and community development at the city and county, they work really well together. And so if someone is better off in the county, the city will refer them to a county opportunity and vice versa. If the county has someone come to them and there might be a better opportunity in the city, they will refer them. So we have a lot of great professional staff to help them. We have SBDC that helps businesses. We have SCORE that helps businesses. Of course, the Chamber, Greater Hagerstown, Chief. We have a lot of people helping. There's almost no wrong door. So I tell people it's never going to get less expensive to start in Hagerstown, Washington County. But if you're ready to, if you have a good product, good quality, and you honor your commitments, you can be very successful here because, again, it's a welcoming community and people want you to be successful.
Well, and I think the point you made about the rent on some of these new living quarters speaks to the fact that somebody thinks that Hagerstown's going in the right direction.
Yeah.
And just not throwing stuff at the wall for entrepreneurs and businesses as well. I know just a while back, even prior to the pandemic, we kind of had a task force together that kind of went through every resource that was available, to businesses and graded them and see where the strengths were, where the weaknesses were, and put some real time and effort to kind of putting together that report and that analysis that went forward to kind of strengthen and also was a catalyst for the incubator at HCC as well. So the work is happening, and I think sometimes we take for granted the detail of work that happens behind the scene, and I know the Chamber is very involved in doing that work as well, and seeing that move forward. So I want to thank you for that. You're because welcome. That was a great opportunity to put everything on one page, because I think as a business owner, and a lot of my clients have always said they don't know what's out there, even though there's a lot out there. So I think if there's one pitch I can give to the Chamber is if you want to find out where everything is, there's one place you can go. Yeah. So that's a great opportunity there as well.
Thanks. Yeah.
Internet purchasing and the ability to buy things from everywhere, do you see that positively impacting the market of some of the businesses in Washington County? Are they taking advantage of the fact that they can now sell their wares or their services to people across the country, whereas before they couldn't?
Yeah, River Bottom Roasters, they sell all over the country now. Court Meinerschmidt and his wife Chelsea just got back from Japan today.
Really?
Maybe yesterday. They were there for a week. They have made a deal to sell their whiskey in Japan.
Wow.
And Court told, I just saw him about an hour ago, he said he could have sold 20 pallets if he had. He just doesn't have the productivity to do it. So there are folks that are able to take advantage of it. Of course, having our warehouses here, Ship Simply over by the airport, they can work with local distributors. You don't have to go through Amazon if you don't want to. You go through them. They can ship out of their warehouse by the airport. So folks are taking advantage of it where they can. And again, some of the downside, it does hurt some of the retail, some of the service industries, and that's why I say if you can leverage what you're doing and take advantage of the opportunities, you can be successful. You just can't be doing the same thing you're doing maybe 2 years ago, even 2 months ago.
But with all due respect, is there a successful business that can say, I'm doing exactly the same thing I did 10 years ago today? I think that's the definition of business.
I don't know of one.
Yeah, I mean, we're explorers.
It's accelerated.
What's next?
This whole COVID, this whole shutdown accelerated it, and really, Cannon Coffee, I talked to Chris, and he said he had always thought about doing curbside pickup, and he was just, it was too hard to do, but when COVID came, it forced him to do it, and now it's, 25 to 40% of his business.
Yeah.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
That's right.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's hold here. We had mentioned, we at least teased the idea that the state has an impact on our local business community. And I think it's fair to say that Maryland is not known as one of the most business friendly states in the country. I want to talk about this, so if you'll stick with us.
Sure.
When we come back, let's talk about Maryland and their business climate. Stay with us. Welcome back. Again, we're here with Paul Frey, President and CEO of the Hagerstown, Washington County Chamber of Commerce. Well, it's no surprise probably to anyone that Maryland is not listed as one of the most business-friendly states in the U.S. Paul, tell us, in your opinion, first of all, why is that the case?
There's a number of reasons, including our General Assembly typically is trying to pay for programs, and very few times they cut programs, and so they have to find money somewhere. And that's one of the driving forces behind, I think, adult use cannabis, because they're going to charge 9% tax on the sales there. They charge 9% on alcohol sales. We are near the bottom of business-friendly states. The Maryland Chamber of Commerce put together a competitive red book, and Maryland is at the middle or the bottom in many of these instances, including I think we're number 46 of migration out of states. So out of all the states, I think we lost 20,000 people a year and a half ago during that year. And so between the taxes, the minimum wage that we've talked about, there's talk about that the governor wants to go to $20 an hour minimum wage, maybe next session, and start driving that home. The fact that, again, they might want to do combined reporting. There's a 700-person company here in Washington County that needs to expand their space. They need to relocate. They're looking in Pennsylvania. They're looking at West Virginia because of the implications here that are on businesses, including, we talked about the family medical leave insurance. So for 700 people, you can imagine the impact that has. And as the wages go up, so does the FICA. So does all the other taxes that we have, all these other numbers that the business have to pay for. And what I've said to the Secretary of Commerce, I've said to Secretary of Labor, I saw them last week, I said to Secretary of Environment, the rhetoric does not match what's happening. So our new governor doesn't want to leave anyone behind. We reminded him that business is someone you don't want to leave behind because it impacts all of us. And they are all saying we want to have a healthy, vibrant business economy in Maryland. But the programs we're putting into place, the policies that are being put into place don't match that. And it really is affecting especially small businesses, but large businesses because of the impact it has on them.
We have Senator Quarterman coming on to talk about much of the legislation that happened here over the last session in a near future episode. Let's get into some of those, though, if we could. Let's talk about the Paid Family Medical Leave Act. Can you kind of give us a primer on what that's all about?
So it's affectionately known as FAMLI, F-A-M-L-I, which stands for Family and Medical Leave Insurance. And the intention is very good. You know, if you have a family member that needs your care, so an elderly parent that might need your care, if you have a surgery that you might have to have off, if you know, a spouse has a baby, whether the wife needs to have time off, the mother or the husband wants to take time off to be with the new child, it's well intentioned, but it's very it leans a lot towards the employee and not towards the business. So you can take up to 24 weeks of paid leave, 60% of your pay. And so if you have an elderly parent and need 12 weeks off, you can take off for that. If later in that same calendar year you have a medical emergency you need to take off, you can take off for that. So up to 24 weeks of paid leave. We have some concerns, including we think 24 weeks is a long time.
Almost half a year.
Yeah, it doesn't include if you have FMLA.
Right.
So if you have FMLA, that's another 12 weeks. That's 36 weeks you can take off in some cases. Our concerns are if you have time off on the books, they are not allowing businesses to have the employee take that time off first.
Right.
And then,
Which they do with FMLA.
Right.
yes. And then
FMLA, you're required to take all PTO before you can apply for FMLA benefits.
And the way it works for family, if you take it off, you then get your other 12 weeks. So if you have 4 weeks of PTO, you can take that and get paid, but then you can also take 12 weeks. And we're suggesting run it concurrently. So if you take 4 weeks of PTO, then you have 8 weeks to take off. Right now, again, the recourse for businesses is very light. If you have a dishonest employee or someone who's taking advantage of the system, it's not very easy for the business to contest that. And then, again, this day and age of labor issues, every business person I talk to, small and large, wants to take care of the employees because they don't want to lose them. And we think that employers can do that. We frankly think it would be better to set up as a private system. So let the private insurance companies handle this. Don't let the Department of Labor, don't let the government handle this because it becomes messier. Plus, the Department of Labor has to spend another $20 million hiring 80 people to cover this new program. And then for small businesses, if you have 14 or fewer employees, the employer does not have to match, but the employees do. They have to pay in their half. And so the employees still have to track it. And if you have a 5-person shop, to have one person out for 12 or 24 weeks,
It's a killer.
and if you hire a temp person, you can't, in some cases, train a temp person for the job they have. So it's well-intentioned, but we think the program is really going to be really tough on businesses. We're trying to soften it as we speak. They start collecting the money on October 1st, 2024.
Yes.
And
And
they
that's
pay
another
out-
oddity. The benefits don't start till 2026, but they start
Right.
taking the money in October of
Right. They
2024.
have to build up their fund. They have
Yeah.
to build up the piggy bank.
Okay.
So we have concern about that.
So, and I think that it could probably be better laid out. But what about if we take the control from the government and playing devil advocate here? Then how do we govern the businesses? Because there's wrongdoers in any sort.
There's bad actors, yep.
Right.
I think you're seeing it happen now. I mean, I think because of COVID, because people had to be flexible, because people have tough time hiring people, they're working with it now. It's just our opinion that if the government is running it, the Department of Labor, it can't be as efficient. So let the private sector do it. Let an insurance company set up a program that a company could buy into that would pay into this fund, just like you do health insurance.
Well, or short-term disability or long-term disability or whatever else.
And if you have that, it doesn't matter. And so what you're going to see happening is businesses are going to cut some of these benefits. They're going to get rid of long-term disability. They're going to get rid of short-term disability.
Which is not good.
They're going to probably give less time off officially. And so it ends up hurting the people we're trying to help. So we just think there's better ways of doing this. And we think having a private sector handle this might be better than a government entity.
We've said it on the show, and I know I'm on record for it. I think the private sector is usually more qualified for implementing, and the government should just be the control.
Yes.
Right? If there's a bad actor, then the government should be able to step in and put those controls in place and be supportive. I just think we take away from the front line, right? It's just like any business. If you make all the decisions from up high and not really understand what the day-to-day interactions and what is impacting your employees, you're usually not making the right decisions.
Yeah.
So, I think we need to rely on the experts here. I agree in that sort. And I think, we need to get the employees involved in some of the decision making as well and see what they want. I know generationally, benefits are changing.
Right.
This new generation don't want the same benefits generations in the past, wanted and needed more so.
Right.
They want a little bit more flexibility. They may not need some of the things that are being paid for by business right now, and they would take less. Maybe a little bit flexibility. I remember my time. I remember when VTO came, a voluntary time off. Who would have thought that people would just volunteer to leave work and not get paid?
Right.
But people took advantage of it all the time. Not me, but people took advantage of it. But it was a change in how we did business, and even with PTO now, we see from we used to have buckets of time. You had your holiday time, you had your sick time, you had your plan time. So I think businesses understand that a little bit more because they interact. They know how it's affecting their bottom line. They know how it's affecting scheduling, and if they could be in position to work with their staff and come up with the best thing for everyone to ultimately serve their customer, I think the government should kind of take a step back and look into that.
Now, we'll give Secretary Wu, she's a Secretary of Labor here for Maryland. She is coming in August to talk to businesses because we expressed to her as a chamber executive group, there's a lot of businesses that still don't know about this. Even some larger businesses. And we don't want people to be surprised. And so to her credit, she's coming in August to visit with our business community to talk about this Family Medical Leave Insurance Act and get some more feedback. They have every 10 days they have meetings to get feedback from businesses to see how they can better manage this in a more equitable fashion and more efficient way.
Now, is that event open to more than just chamber members?
It will be. We're going to open up to the public. We're going to find a big enough venue so
that's got to be a must-see.
So she spoke again with us last week, and she said, I have some comments to make, and we said, well, leave time for questions. Yeah. And so to her credit, she listened. I know that she has a role to play, but I think she's trying to make this as easy to use as possible, and I think we'll see some adjustments over the years as this gets implemented.
Well, the educational benefit of that alone, and credit to the chamber, there's that's exactly the educational piece, because you're right. I know businesses today that are far beyond the 14 employees that I've mentioned that we were going to be talking about this, and what's that? Yeah. That's not good.
Yeah.
And you might get a packet in the mail from the state of Maryland, but have you ever tried to read one of those?
This is very complicated. It is, I think it was an 88-page bill.
Yeah. Well, I read the bill summary, which was only 3 pages, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Yeah.
Right, and if you put FMLA on top of that, a lot of things you mentioned, they're overlapping. Even as an employee, even if it is, I don't know what I can take, when I should take it, and when it's in the best interest of me and my family either.
And what's the applicability? For example, I'm a corporation that's based in West Virginia. I have Maryland employees. I withhold Maryland taxes. Do I have to be in the program? I'm a corporation in Maryland that I have employees in West Virginia. Are they eligible for this benefit?
If you're an employee in Maryland, that employer has to be in the program, and you have to participate.
Right. So it doesn't matter where the employer is based.
That's right. If you are hiring a Maryland, so Spherion, they're in West Virginia, it's going to be complicated for them because that employee could work for them in Maryland, it could work for them in West Virginia, it could work for them in Pennsylvania, and in Virginia. So where does it apply to that employee? So it's complicated. I think they're trying to work the kinks out. I think as we implement it, we're going to say, whoops, we need to make some changes here.
Well, and that's another good argument for why the private sector should manage this and not necessarily the government. Yeah. Because that level of problem doesn't exist.
Yeah. The other issue we talked just briefly about was adult use cannabis. Again, not judging whether cannabis use is okay or not, but the impact it's going to have on employers, on unemployment, on accidents. If you use cannabis 2 weeks ago, it's still in your system. You may not be under the influence, but if you have an accident and it's in your system, how do you treat that? How do you detect it? And so Senator McKay said at one of our events that something the General Assembly will be tweaking in the next 5 or 6 sessions because it's going to go into place July 1st, and we're going to get some real use here in Maryland. I know some of these other states are dealing with it, New York and Colorado and Washington, but it's going to impact Maryland.
Well, I sat on the commission for medical marijuana, and of course the commission was disbanded because of recreational, and we kind of built some of that framework out. And that's always, those questions were there for medical marijuana. We also seen a large influx of individuals who are getting medical marijuana cards over the years as they opened up what qualified you for medical marijuana cards, which was really one of the biggest transitions to go in recreation, because it was at a point where anybody almost, met some kind of qualification health-wise that they could qualify for medical medicinal marijuana if their physician signed off and approved them to do so. And those things have always been out there. I do say that I think there is still a stigma with marijuana as well that employees are going to have to kind of circumvent. I know in the workforce that drug testing has been prominent, not saying, can't speak to any specifically, but I know a lot of companies have changed their drug testing policies because it was impossible almost to get employees at one point in time because of the number of employees that had marijuana in their system. And I think we look at it more as the drug versus the drug like an alcohol, right? You know, both can put you on the influence. Both you shouldn't be at work using,
Right.
or you shouldn't be conducting. But alcohol, we have a test, right? You know, there's sobriety tests. Even right now with the legislation that passed, where police officers can't pull you over due to the smell or
Right.
presence of marijuana as well. And I agree. I think in legislation, there was a special even meeting today to go through some of those laws to kind of evaluate how they're going to roll out and what the impact and how to communicate some of this stuff as well. Because again, the perception is going to be a celebration. I think, but as an employer, there is some concerns that you may have. You know, as far as especially in manufacturing, you think about that when you're moving large equipment around and you have your life and safety as well as products and customers as well. And how do you taper this and set the boundaries of when you shouldn't use marijuana? So I agree. I believe there is going to be some pause that needs to be taken kind of to how we frame these laws, but we're not the only state. One of the things we joined the National Coalition. So there's a national coalition of up to 18 states that actually have legalized marijuana, to kind of understand and learn from them. Some things we will learn from, some things we will be doomed to repeat.
Right.
And I think everybody can say we hope that no one's life or livelihood is impacted while we make these decisions.
Well, and I have a philosophical issue personally that the government is pushing cannabis to make some money. I mean, because they want to pay for some of these things. And so that's a philosophical concern I have. And then they say, by the way, if you have a drug problem, here's a number to call. And so the government's pushing it, they're making money off of it, and then, you know, we have these other issues. So again, it's not whether or not you should use it, it's just the fact that they're trying to raise money. Maybe instead of cutting some programs, we keep adding to the budget. Now, how do we pay for it? So,
well, you know, alcohol got us out of the Great Depression, right?
In many ways.
And we're doing the same thing with sports betting right now as well.
Yeah, I know.
I see those commercials now that says, "Oh yeah, and if you have a problem, you know,
Right.
you just
Right,
spend
yeah.
30 seconds
Right.
of selling me on something,
Right.
and then at the end you kind of put this little disclosure just to make sure you don't get dinged." So I think we need to be more responsible for our constituents in
Yeah.
all ways possible.
Welcome back. We're here once again with Washington County Chamber of Commerce President and CEO Paul Frey. Paul, I want to talk a little bit about the future, but I also want to it occurs to me that I didn't give you an opportunity to cover anything that's on your mind. What's on your mind first? Tell us about the topics that are important to you, and then we'll get into the future a little
Well,
bit.
we've talked about labor, so that's at the top of the list. But I think the housing issue, again, the median price for a house in Washington County today is $405,000.
Wow.
And what's the salary?
The salary for that, I think,
Median salary.
is $68,500, which affords you $250,000 on a home.
Right.
Which, by the way, there are none on the market right now. And so that's really a concern we have is all these people coming. We have a high migration from Frederick County, from Montgomery County, because they like their quality of life. So they're selling their house for a big number. They're paying over the market value here. They're jacking up the prices. And so now our median income for a house is $405,000, and our median income is $68,500, which can afford $250,000. So that's a really big concern that we have. And to solve that issue, we really need in particular, county folks, and in particular, city of Hagerstown, because they control a lot of the water, and all the other municipalities to work together to resolve this issue. I know the city has said they need $100 million to resolve this water and sewer issue. It's not going to get any cheaper next year in 10 years. So I really
Well, and the
think
way
it's
interest rates are rising, the cost of funds are going up too.
I really think we need to figure this out, because, again, if we don't, our neighbors to our north and south are going to. And so that's a real concern. I know the town of Funkstown, they are working with the city. They're going to add 100 houses here coming up soon, and then another 200 after that. And so those are important issues. And I just think, again, we've talked to our elected officials in Annapolis. We think a little bit less pressure on businesses, because the cost of doing business goes up, all the prices go up. And then the people we're trying to help lose out too. You know, you go to any quick serve restaurant, you're $11 for a meal. It's really expensive.
If you can get in at $11.
And we talked about groceries, how much they cost and what you can get for a couple $100. And it's it's hard on the folks here. So not easy solutions, but I think if we can resolve this housing thing and start working together as a community, we can resolve it.
I like to point out, and I know it's a little irony, but when we hear the word gentrification, we assume it's always something racial or it's something always in an urban community that it has to happen. That can happen right here. That means the housing market gets so high that the people who were born, raised here, who work here every day can't even afford to live here anymore. Then they have to displace themselves, either going looking for jobs somewhere or impacting their cost of living because they have to commute elsewhere, live elsewhere to commute here to continue to work. Bring in a wealthier population and attracting businesses, so you need balance. And I've said this over and over as well. We need balance. And I think if people start realizing that this gentrification isn't just something that's racial, it's actually something that's economic. And we need to pay attention because it's happening right now.
We talked about the $2,500 a month apartments. They're going to be in downtown Hagerstown.
Yeah, I paid $200 for groceries and 6 bags were outside. And one of them had one thing in it. So we're seeing grocery prices go up. We talked about gas prices, and I think we always have some great conversations off air as well. And we talk about the recession quite often, and we kind of debate back and forth on this. So I would love to hear you gentlemen's take on the recession now that we heard the inflation report come out recently. We heard the job report come out as well. So, Paul, from a chamber standpoint of Jim, I know we have some great conversation on this as well, but love to hear your input there.
I think businesses are being cautious. I think they still need to hire people. Washington County is in a unique place where there are people coming here to live here. The warehouses are here. They have people developing their businesses here. So it's a little bit of an anomaly, but I also think that if this gas price keeps going up, the electric vehicles, the cost of vehicles, whether electric or used or gas powered, is going to impact not only the folks selling them, but the people buying them. So,
and the city who has to build infrastructure, and counties have to build infrastructure to support them as well.
So, we're cautiously optimistic. Again, we lucked out. We got the stadium before the money went away in the state, and we just wanted our fair share. So we have lots of good things happening. We just hope that the folks who want to use all these services can afford to come out here and to participate.
Yeah. You mentioned warehouses. Where is the future for warehouses? We've seen a lot of warehouses go up recently. We have a number of viewers have said to me, when are we going to stop building warehouses? Is there economic benefit in building warehouses? What is the future for them, in your opinion?
So Terrence mentioned balance, and I think balance is very important. I think we're there. I think, again, Jonathan Horowitz reported out at the county, we have about another 10 million square feet of warehouses that are set to be finished.
On the books?
On the books.
Yeah.
And he said for every 1 million square feet of warehouse, you have about 500 jobs. And so that's good, but we're going to get people to staff them. So I think we're seeing what's on the books and what's being developed right now. That's probably going to be, maybe not it, but it's going to slow down. And then we have to infill again with, I think, this housing. And so the comp plan for the county is being worked on. That's going to be finalized next year, but they're getting public input. And so the idea is, where is a county, where have they established they want growth for housing? Keep the ag, keep the rural area, and then where can we build houses?
Don't pave over Washington County, as
and
your
we've done a pretty good
predecessor
job.
used to say.
We have, over 40% of ag land, and there's places where they've determined where it's best to build because the infrastructure's there, water, sewer, fire and rescue. And so let's build where we're supposed to build and have a little more density and keep our rural feel, because that's why people are coming here. That's why, frankly, I love about Washington County is a rural feel. We live in Smithsburg. We're surrounded by farms, and it's nice. And then, so where do you build the housing? Yeah.
Excellent.
I'll piggyback on that as well. Talking about why people come out here. You're the chamber for the county. Port 44 and everything that's going on in Williamsport right now.
Yeah.
That's another big. I know we talk about downtown, but that community is blossoming as well, and it's becoming a retreat for a lot of people to come in a big tourism spot for vacationing. So, anything you're hearing from the chamber?
Yeah, so
perspective?
Sprout just opened up last week.
Yes.
Justin and Katie Anderson opened
I
that
haven't
up.
been there yet, but I want to go.
They had over 100 people there at the ribbon cutting.
That's
At
amazing.
10:30 in the morning.
They deserve the success. They're great people
So
as
the
well.
Port 44, all the work those ladies are doing out there is amazing. Boonesboro's got some growth happening. Smithsburg's got some growth happening. So we think whole Washington County, we're really fortunate. We have the ag, we have the parks, we have the city park, but we have lots of opportunity. And I said to someone 5 years ago, if you want to get in to Williamsport, you better do it now. And she did, because it's not built out yet, but it's growing, and it's not getting any less expensive to start developing there.
They got in all right. And not only did they get in as developers, but they're creating their own community as well and bringing in business owners and kind of creating a feel and a culture down there, a business culture of their own in their own downtown core. So I'm looking forward to what comes out down there as well.
I liken that to one of the Southern Maryland little communities that are just kind of, people go there as a destination. I think there's a lot of possibilities down there, and living in Williamsport, not in Williamsport proper, but living just outside. I mean, I'm just so excited about
You got
what's going
canal,
on down
you've
there.
got
You've got
all
the
the
canal,
different
and
bike
you've got the
trail.
canal headquarters, which I will argue, and I may be right, I may be wrong, but I would argue that's part of what made people start looking
Yes.
at Williamsport a little differently.
Yeah.
Is that those canal headquarters, and in that case, the U.S. government made an investment in our community that I think is going to reap benefits.
That was a great partner, a collaboration between CVB with our U.S. senators, our congressmen over the years, the town of Williamsport. As they've always said, you need to be on the canal where you're working. And so that was a really win for Williamsport and for Washington County.
Absolutely. Well, Paul, I think we're out of time. We have a lot more we could talk about. I'd like to make this a quarterly thing if you're up
Happy
for that.
to, absolutely.
The Chamber obviously does great work in Washington County, and we're very appreciative of the work you do. You have a very small staff, I know that, but that doesn't mean you don't do big things.
We have a small set, we have a great board, so it's a good team effort.
Indeed.
Quick, how many members?
675 member organizations representing over 40,000 employees.
And if you're a business in Washington County and you don't belong to the Chamber, you should.
Yeah, come talk to us.
So, all right, that's all the time we have tonight. We hope you will like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, send us your feedback to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That's feedback@theflipsidetv.com. Most importantly, join us again next week as we welcome Senator Paul Quarterman on another episode of The Flip Side. Good night.